Hello, my name is Leroy Blevins. Welcome to Mysteries and Histories. In this episode here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you something to think about when it comes to the JFK assassination. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some information that's not told in a JFK assassination, but it's told in my book that I have out in Evidence of Conspiracy. You'll find this information in there and stuff because I like bringing these points out to people because you have to look at everybody, okay, when it comes to JFK assassination. Okay, they're looking at, Jack Ruby and Jack Ruby's back history and Oswald and his back history and everything else. But they're not looking at people that surround the assassination as well. You have Cuba, they're looking at, they barely look at the Russian part of it. They just mainly look at Cuba or the mafia and everything else. That's what everybody generates when they look at this case as well. But there's a lot of things you have to look at, okay? Just like me, when I did my investigation stuff, there's a lot of things I have to look at. And there's a lot of things I find that, as you people knows when you watch my research, no one else has found the stuff that I found, but I uncovered it. And it's always been in front of public's eye. So I want to point out some things and some facts here to give you something to think about when it comes to the JFK assassination on who really was behind the JFK assassination. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out some facts here. Okay, and I'm going to talk about one thing at a time. Okay, and I'm going to point up some facts, as again, like I said, and I want to show people some stuff, and I'm going to show people stuff that they never even knew about, or not even researchers knew about, but they're there. Okay, they're there. All right. Now let's look at Mr. Zapruder for a moment. Okay, we're not making no accusations now. We're not going to make no claims or not like that. I'm just bringing out some facts. Okay, and like I said, give you something to think about when it comes to JFK assassination. When we watch the Bronson film, we see Mrs. Setzman standing right behind Mr. Zapruder, and again, right in this image here, okay, framed from the Bronson film, see Mrs. Setzman's hands are up and covering Mr. Zapruder's ears when the shots were being fired from behind them, Mrs. Setzman and Mr. Zapruder. Even in the Orville Nix film, we see Mrs. Setzman's hands come up, and as you see here, her arms are right down here, but then this is frame 23, but by the time frame 52 comes up and after the shots are fired from behind him, you'll see Mrs. Setzman covering over Mr. Zapruder's ears. Now, Mr. Zapruder sold his film for $150,000, a majority of the money he gave to Mrs. Setzman. This always makes me think, why did he give her most of the money from the film that he filmed, okay? And all she was there supposedly was just to steady him because he had vertigo. But then again, when we watch the films and images and stuff like that, we'll see Mrs. Setzman come down, and then we see Mr. Zapruder jump down and walks away. Now, does this sound like somebody that had vertigo? I mean, if I know people that has vertigo myself, and when they get off of a certain location, they was getting nervous about being on because they're afraid of heights. When they got down to ground level, they're like nervous for a minute to either stand there or they sit down on the ground for a minute till they collect their nerves and everything else. But Mr. Zapruder jumps off the wall, retaining wall here, and after he jumps off the wall, he just walks away like nothing happened. Mrs. Setzman starts turning into the shelter, but then I guess he called her over because then she made a U-turn and went back over and started following Mr. Zapruder. Then, while Mr. Zapruder walks off, he goes to the newsroom, okay? But Mrs. Setzman stands in front of the Texas School Book Depository. Why is she standing in front of the Texas School Book Depository? And it's like, well, it's understandable because, everybody's standing around wondering what's going on, but Mr. Zapruder's already gone at this point, okay? So it makes me wonder, would she still be with Mr. Zapruder because, he had vertigo and stuff and what just happened and stuff? Okay, they all will be freaking out at that point, So you figure she would probably stay with Mr. Zapruder, but she wasn't. She was just standing in front of the Texas School Book Depository. And then all of a sudden, she disappears and no one knows where she went to after that. Okay? But then we have Mr. Zapruder goes straight to the newsroom. And he gives his interview and everything else. At the same time, they're trying to develop his film. Now, he was one of the first ones that actually they interviewed live on TV. Now, when I was watching him, okay, and I was watching this interview and stuff, we'll see Mr. Zapruder cough. He coughs, he goes, then brings his hand up like this, as you see here. Why did he cough first, then bring his hand up to his mouth? Okay. And then he also made a point out in this interview that the assassin was right behind him. Okay. And it's like, okay, now he said assassin's behind him. He coughs and he brings his hand up like this. So, I'm marking this down and as I'm looking around. And then we hear about Jack Ruby now being at the police station all the time. Okay. Well, ain't it funny that when we watch the films and images, as you see here, not only Jack Ruby was at the police station during this time stuff, but also Mr. Zapruder was too. As you see here, here's Mr. Zapruder right here. Same profile, same glasses, same jawline, chin, nose, mouth, all the same. Here's Mr. Zapruder right here. Now he's also seen at the police station. Now when they pick up Oswald, okay, Oswald comes in. What is Oswald doing when he comes in? They take pictures of him doing this. One hand here like this, and another hand like this. Okay, like this. And here's another image. Again, Oswald, hand down like this, and the other hand like this. He knows that there's photographers there, reporters there. And what's this stand for? A lot of people don't know this, but actually this is called the Russian hammer. Okay, is Oswald giving them the thumbs up that, hey, the job is done? Giving them a sign, the Russians, the sign that, hey, the job's done, the KGB, I should say the KGB, the job's done, because he's holding up that Russian symbol, just like Mr. Zapruder did. Mr. Zapruder also coughed, as I said, on live TV, and then he said, assassin behind him, and he coughed, and he goes, you could tell it was not real cough, though, but he coughed, and he brings his hands up, like this. Okay, another Russian symbol, okay? Now let's look at Mr. Zapruder's points here. And what I mean by points is this. See, is this it? Nope. Hold on. Is this it? Yeah. Now let's look at this for a moment. Mr. Zapruder was the only person that filmed the whole assassination. The only person that was filming on that side of Elm Street. The only person that had the best location to film the whole assassination. He was filming in front of two gunmen, which was right behind him, and fired shots from behind him. Claimed he had vertigo, but then, he jumps off the wall. First one he goes right to the TV station after he gets done filming. First person to tell his story, and first person to sold his film and got a large sum of money. He turned that over to Mess Assessment. Okay, so see, there's a lot of points that people don't look at. Only person that filmed the whole assassination. Only person on that side of Elm Street filming. No other person around him. You got cameras and people take pictures left and right all around Houston Street there, up and down Houston, on the top corner of Elm Street, but nowhere else. The other ones had to run around from Houston and between Maine and Elm to come around and film, like Orville Nix, much more film, Bronson film, okay? All these people had to film from a different location on this side of Elm Street, but only one person was filming on that side of Elm Street. Had the best view of the whole Elm Street area. The whole street. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Things you have to look at this when you have to think about who's behind it. So see, there's information. Now, no one knew that Mr. Zapruder was in the police station, but we could see him in the films and images. Mr. Zapruder, first one he gave his testimony on live TV. He claimed where the assassin was at. He coughed, and then he held up the symbol here. Same as Oswald did when he's walking through, when he first being brought into the police station, he's got his hand up like this, which is a Russian symbol. Okay, saying the job is done. Now let's look at Oswald and stuff, and we'll look at other people surrounding Oswald. Okay, we know this here. We're going to pull up this flyer here. Now, no one knows where this flyer came up with, but we do know that Oswald did have flyers made up before. And Oswald worked in printing and everything else. Was Oswald behind this? We don't know, but we know Oswald made fake IDs and stuff like that. So these are things we got to look at, because this stuff starts showing up when Kennedy was planning on coming to Dallas stuff. All of a sudden, these things start coming up left and right all over the Dallas area. Not in other parts of Texas, just in the Dallas area. These flyers start coming up. Who lives in the Dallas area? Oswald. Okay, so all of a sudden these flyers gets uh, brought up and shown. Okay, but no one knows who was behind them. Now let's look at the person that helped out the Oswalds. Okay, like I said, I'm giving you information that no one's going to tell you about. Okay, now let's look at Ruth Payne. Okay, Ruth Payne speaks Russian. Okay, she met Oswald, and then when they first got back, through friends, Oswald's friends, I should say, when they first got back from Germany, because Oswald he came back from Germany in in the middle summer of 1962. Okay, and he also knew Ruth Payne and everything else like that. So, they was getting involved in 1962 and everything, and with Oswald, and then Oswald's ended up living with Ruth Payne as well in 1963. Now, remember, Oswald ordered Carcano rifle in March of 2000. Excuse me. I don't want to keep on saying 2000 because I'm thinking now times, but I'm back then. Oswald ordered Carcano rifle of March of 1963, and he also ordered a revolver. Now, in April of that year, 1963, he tried to assassinate General Walker, but they never found the rifle or anything that Oswald used. So, they overlooked that at that point in time. Okay. So now, where is this rifle at? Well, the rifle is actually in Ruth Payne's garage this whole time. Between the time of General Walker being shot at to the time of this JFK assassination, the rifle was in Ruth Payne's garage. Now, what people don't know, and won't tell you or give you this information, but as I say, I do. Okay, in May of 1963, Oswald moved to New Orleans. Ruth Payne took Oswald's wife and children to New Orleans with him so they can live with them. Then Ruth Payne comes back to Dallas, where she lived at, around Dallas area. Okay, when Oswald was in New Orleans, he wrote a letter to the main office in New York at a Fair Play for Cuba committee. He said he wanted to open up an office in St. Louis there. In New Orleans, excuse me. He wanted to open up an office in New Orleans at the time. The head of the FPFCC sent him a letter back saying, no, they don't want an office open in New Orleans at that point in time. So Oswald wrote him back, says he's going to do it his own self anyway. He don't care what they say. He's going to do it. So Oswald orders 500 applications, 300 membership cards, and 1,000 leaflets with the header reads, hands off of Cuba. And Lee asked his wife, Marina, to sign his membership card as A.J. Heidel. So Marina's the one to sign his membership card for Fair Play for Cuba committee. This is when he started in May. And he ran this stuff here until September when he automatically went back to Dallas. But first, before he moved back in September, he called Ruth Payne, and Ruth Payne comes back and gets Oswald's wife and kids, takes them back to Dallas, and Oswald goes ahead and heads to Mexico. And when he's in Mexico, he applies for a visa for Cuba. He wanted to go through Cuba on his way back to Russia, as he claimed. And then he also went to Russian ambassador as well and trying to get his visa to go back there as well. But they claimed they turned him down. But there was two people actually. The one that Oswald went to was the Russia embassy. And this guy here, which he comes involved now, as being Oswald, he's the one that went to the Cuba embassy to apply for a visa to go through Cuba. Okay, this is the guy here. He said his name was Oswald, which would be in favor of this big old plot against assassination of JFK. So this guy was over there talking to the ambassador, Cuba ambassador, while Oswald was over there talking to Russian ambassador. Okay, but Oswald didn't go to both places. Then Oswald goes back to Dallas. Now, what I want to bring up is this. Now, everybody knows how people were back in 1960s and 1950s and 1940s and everything else. There was an assassination attempt against General Walker, okay, in April of 1963. Oswald hides his rifle inside of Ruth Payne's garage. Now, Ruth Payne took Oswald's wife and children to New Orleans, where Oswald was at. So they was there the end of May, June, July, August, and September when they start coming back. Now there's 4 months that Ruth Paine was back at home, and she knew the policeman and them was looking for Oswald for taking an assassination tip against General Walker. You're telling me that she did not have to go through her mind and says, well, let me look through their stuff that's in my garage and see if there's a rifle there? That did not come to her mind. Do you see what I'm saying? The rifle was there, but it did not come to her mind to look through their stuff, because that's how people are. If someone was accused of something and they come and the police officers and stuff come to your house and they're going to sit there and say, hey, this guy attempted at General Walker's place. This is a major offense right here, against a general. You telling me that she didn't have cross her mind to look through their stuff and see if that rifle was there? And then when they get back to Dallas, she's the one that got Oswald the job. She's the one that got Oswald a job at the Texas School Book Depository. Plus, she's the one that talked to him, to Fritz, to take Oswald to work as he was there before he got his boarding house. And then when he got his boarding room, where he stayed there closer, is trying to push him away from there because he lived 2 doors down from Ruth Paine. Now think about this for a minute. He lived 2 doors down from Ruth Paine. Oswald decides to get a boarding room close to work. Now, if he's going back and forth every day, he could say, hey, I'll give you a few dollars for gas, because it would save Oswald a lot more money in the long run if he just went ahead and stayed at Ruth Paine's house too, and says, hey, I'll give you a certain amount of money every week. I'll pay for, riding back and forth with you. I'll pay for half the gas and stuff, It would have been easier on him that he would have been with his kids every day and his wife every day and everything else, but he didn't. He got a boarding room, which is going to take more money out of his pocket. Now, do you see what I'm saying here? Something to think about. Okay, now we have Ruth Paine gets him his job there, like I said. Okay, there's a lot of things in the JFK assassination that other people don't look at, or people want to talk about or bring up, just like people don't understand. When Oswald was arrested, and he admit that, they wouldn't give him no representation for him or nothing else like this. So basically, he didn't have no lawyer or nothing at that time. But there was people that actually asked Oswald they would represent him, but he turned them down. Here's one of them, for a matter of fact. Here's one. Here's a wireless that was from an attorney from Chicago. Okay, he says he wants to obtain. Let's see, on television you requested counsel. If you have not been able to obtain counsel and desire counsel, you may request a conference with me. Okay, this is a lawyer. Okay, sent to Oswald. And this was sent to him on November 23rd, the day after the assassination. But he turned him down. Why he turned him down? Because of the fact is, Ruth Paine and Oswald's wife, Marina, spent the whole weekend trying to contact, let's see here. Hold on for a moment. I think I got it up here somewhere. The whole weekend they tried to contact, okay, here it is. And it was reported when Oswald asked for representation, he asked for John Abbott, which is ABT, Abbott, who was a lawyer for the Commission Party of USA. Basically, he was a Russian lawyer, okay, and that's who Oswald wanted. And Ruth Paine and Oswald's wife, Marina, spent the whole weekend trying to contact him. Now, Oswald was, had other lawyers who wanted to take his case, but he turned them all down. He wanted this one person. And also, here we have Ruth Paine again, helping Oswald get that lawyer, spending the whole weekend trying to call him, even his wife, Marina, trying to get a hold of him to represent Oswald. Okay. And then what got me was an interview that I watched of Ruth Paine. And it started making me think more now. Okay, here's Ruth Paine, meets Oswald. They move in with her. They move in with her. She has all of Oswald's stuff and everything else in her garage. Then they moved to New Orleans and they're still in there, and ordered the Court Cannon rifle and all this stuff. And she didn't bother going through it after claims of him being supposed to try to assassinate General Walker, and then come and get him again from New Orleans, and then turn around, help him get his job there, then get him a ride back and forth to work, and then trying to get him a lawyer. Okay, but one thing got me was this, and it really bothers me even to this day when I think about it. Okay, and it's I want to bring this up, which I'll bring this part up here in a minute, that part there, because I want to tell you. Uh, okay, here it was in a 2000 interview. Okay, they did with Ruth Payne, and what got me was at the end, she specifically said that claimed that when Oswald was shot 2 days later and killed, her problems was gone. They were over. Her problems were over now, people. Why is her problems over with? Because he's been assassinated now. 2 days later, her problem's over with. She's still stuck with Maureen and her kid and Oswald's kids. So how's her problem over with? Okay. But she says when Oswald was shot and killed, her problems were over with. Why did she say that? Why was it so specific about him being killed that her problems were going to be over with? Wouldn't her problems still continue even if he wasn't shot? So if he wasn't shot, her problems will still continue, but her life went good and great, and her problems was over with when Oswald was killed. That's kind of suspicious to me, especially when she said that. Okay, there's a lot of things that people don't understand when it comes to this case. Just like just like Cuba. Cuba was only brought into this, okay, because Oswald. But Cuba was only used from May, June, well, the end of May, then June, July, August, and September, partial September. Then they went back to Dallas and all that stuff. But for 3 months, he was pushing that fair play for community Cuba committee. Okay, and that's when he started claiming he was a Marxist as well. Only for 3 months, Cuba was brought into it. Oswald was bringing up. Cuba was only for the 3 months that he was in New Orleans. It wasn't in Dallas, and it wasn't before he went to Dallas anything about Cuba. It was only when he went to New Orleans. Then Cuba was brought into it. But like I said, people don't understand that the day of assassination, one of JFK's members was with Castro at the time. And he was going to say, yeah, let's go ahead. And I want to meet with JFK and everything else. And we'll get this thing settled and everything. And then one of Castro's informants came in his place and said, hey, the president was just shot and killed. And Castro threw a fit over it. Because remember, what people didn't know at that time is the Russian government had nuclear nuclear vessels in Cuba at the time. They had nuclear weapons there at the time when JFK was supposed to go down there and talk to Castro in Cuba, because they had a nuclear base down there in Cuba. The Russian government did. They had a nuclear base down there in Cuba, which people didn't ever talk about because they're always talking about, well, it was Cuba, it was Castro, it was the mafia. They don't give you this information out because they don't want you to think, well, could have been, KGB behind assassination? Could have been something totally different than what we are told, because we know we're not being told the truth. But when you start looking at this information, you start looking at people that surrounds that JFK assassination stuff, and red flags start pointing up left and right. It's like there's more to this story than we're ever going to be told. So that's why I want to make this video here, give you a little bit more information, give you something to think about, because you're not going to find these answers nowhere else, because no other research is going to tell you this. The government's not even going to tell you this. But I'm going to tell you this because I've did my research and I did my investigation. And I look for these stuff. I look through the stuff like right here. Why was Mr. Zapruder at the police station for? We could see him in the films and images. Why did Mrs. Setzman cover up Mr. Zapruder's ears? Why did Mr. Zapruder sell his film the same exact day that he filmed the assassination, and then turn around and give most of the proceeds from that money to his secretary? He claimed he had vertigo. She was on the wall holding him because of vertigo. But why did he jump down off the wall and just walk straight away? Why did he go straight to the newsroom? I mean, if he was so upset as people claim, and other people are so upset, I mean, those people still sitting around there. The Newmans were still sitting around there. Mary Mormon was still sitting around downtown in Dallas, right there at Dealey Plaza for an hour, or a couple hours or so, because they're so messed up of what just happened. But here's Mr. Spruder, jumps down the wall, walks away, goes straight to the newsroom. Straight to the newsroom. Okay? Ruth Payne. Okay? She's going to help Oswald time and time again. Okay? Get him a lawyer and everything else. She holds his rifle in her garage. She said she had no idea that the rifle was in her garage during the whole time. But nothing clicked in her mind. Said, hey, wait a minute. The policeman was here saying he was trying to assassinate uh, this guy named General Walker. So, and all their stuff is in my garage. No curious is saying, because people do get curious. I don't care what anybody says. They're not going to go digging through it and say, hey, is there a rifle in there? Because, they can get in trouble as well. Because, see, Oswald hid the rifle there. She would have been in trouble no matter which way you look at it. So she's going to get paranoid. But it didn't bother her. That's why it gets me. And then she's going to make a statement that her problems and stuff like that, she had all these problems and stuff. But then as soon as Oswald was assassinated 2 days later, her problems was gone. It was over. She didn't have no more problems. Think about that. That's why I want to make this video and give you something to think about. Just like the leaflets right here. No one knows where he started at, who made these up or anything. But we know Oswald made leaflets. We know he made fake IDs. We know he did a lot of printing and stuff like that. So did Oswald make these up and start handing these out, or giving it to other people to hand out? Okay, so when the assassination took place in Dallas, Texas there, because these leaflets is only handed out basically in Dallas, Texas. And if someone comes across this, well, then someone must have been upset with JFK, so they assassinated him there. Okay, it's a big old plan trying to cover up, just like going to New Orleans. Oswald goes to New Orleans. Why? So he can get Cuba involved, trying to put Cuba to blame. And then when he leaves New Orleans, he turns around and he sends somebody else to the Cuba ambassador, while he goes to the Russian ambassador to try to get visas. Because this image here was taken of the guy as he's walking out of the Cuba ambassador there. Okay, that's why they said, oh, how can this be Oswald and this be Oswald? Okay, because Oswald didn't go to the Cuban one, he went to the Russian one, while someone else took his place to go in there. So when they start checking, they said, well, yeah, there was an Oswald here at the Cuba ambassador. Okay, and they can get rid of the one that says in Russia, but they said, here's Oswald here because here's his picture. Well, wait a minute, that's not him. That's not Oswald we're talking about. We're talking about an Oswald looks like this, and show him Oswald's picture here. Not this picture here, but, a picture of Oswald like that. So you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of things you have to look at when it comes to this case. Okay, and most obvious is what's in front of people. Okay, we got a woman that speaks Russia. Okay, which happens to be one of Oswald's friends that lived in the United States. Think about that one. He was just in Russia. Okay, he was in Russia for 3 years. After he got out of the Marine stuff, he went to Russia and affected there. He said he was going to slit his wrist so he could stay there, and you can see there's no marks on his wrist whatsoever, no cut marks or anything. Okay, but he supposedly slit his wrist and everything else so he could stay there. He lives there for 3 years, comes back, and all of a sudden he knows a lady that speaks Russian and stuff like that, and him and his family starts living with them. Okay, and lives with them for all the time. Basically, lived a little here, lived a little there, but most of the time there was in friendships with Ruth Payne and all this other stuff. So see, there's a lot of things you have to look at when it comes to this case here. So I just want to make this video and give you a little bit more information and give you something to think about, okay? Just give you something to think about. So when you read these things and stuff like that, you understand a lot more, and you say, yeah, well, they're pushing the Cuba stuff, but you got to think about this. Cuba was only brought into it because of Oswald and what Oswald did when he was in New Orleans. And they're going to make a big old story behind that, but it really wasn't nothing. Okay, it really wasn't nothing. It was just a printer club there. There was a place that prints stuff there. That's where Oswald printed his stuff and everything else like that. The leaflets, the flyers, the applications, and everything else, and also make fake IDs and stuff. So he printed all that stuff there. And Marina, his wife, was helping him out doing that as well. Then he goes back to Dallas, And it's no more about Cuba. Even before he went to New Orleans, there was nothing to talk about Cuba. Only that little part there for them 3 months that he was in New Orleans. That's when Cuba was brought into it. And then when he got back out of there, Cuba was never brought into it no more than nothing else. He wasn't even talking about Cuba the whole time he was in Dallas before he started assassinating JFK. He wasn't talking about fair play for Cuba committee or nothing like that. He didn't decide, well, let me go ahead and we'll have the chapter come here to Dallas, Texas and stuff. He didn't do none of that. Okay, he didn't do none of that stuff no more. That stuff was already done and over with from New Orleans, and he ain't going to do with it no more. You see what I'm saying? So there's a lot of things you have to look at. So I want to make this video here to give you some more information and some more things that people don't talk about, more details, plus give you something to think about when it comes to JFK assassination. Is there more to this story? Who was really behind it? Thank you and have a pleasant day. Don't forget that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends about us. Even share this video. Thank you and have a blessed day.